session. At this time, we'll continue our public hearing on Council Bill 61 and 62. I'll only be calling the names of those individuals who have not yet been called to testify. If for some reason your name is called and you're here and you have testified, we'd appreciate your letting us know that you've already testified. I'll only be, if your name was previously called but you're unable to testify at that time, you'll have an opportunity to testify at the end of the list. As a reminder, when we call each person to testify, I'm going to call the next few folks. So as soon as you hear a name, please come up and sit in the reserved seats right behind the podium. If a previous speaker has adequately expressed your opinions, please feel free to simply let the council know your position on this matter. With that, I think we'll get started right away. And the first few folks, I'll call the names. Colleen Morris, who will be speaking first. We have Anita Davis, Cindy Zhao, Sam Sabanda, and Josh Greenfield. If you can come up to the front, thank you.
Great. Turning it into a popsicle. Good evening again, Chairman Weinstein and County Council members. For those of you who weren't here, an hour ago, my name is Colleen Morris. I'm president of the Howard County Education Association. I represent 5,900 educators employed by the HCPSS, and we are in support of the Board of Education amendments to the APFO regulations. I was recently discussing the regulations with an elected official that I really like, by the way, and he, or maybe it was a she, told me that it was really easy to make suggestions for regulations when you don't have the responsibility of implementing them. And that may be true. But please let me tell you what is not easy. When class size continually increases, it is difficult to individualize instruction to meet each child's needs. When the school has run out of rooms to teach in and you are assigned to what used to be a closet, it is difficult to teach. When the school is overcrowded and teachers must share a teaching space, it is difficult not to be tardy to your own class. You have the same 5 minutes between classes that students do, and this does happen. When the sound of rain on a portable's tin roof distracts students from the lesson, or when you have to schedule bathroom breaks for students because your portable doesn't have a bathroom, it is difficult to teach. When overcrowding and redistricting splits neighborhoods, friendships, and PTAs apart, it is difficult for the school community to focus on teaching and establishing strong relationships. All of these issues can be mitigated with better APFO regulations. It is not that development can't happen, it's just that the infrastructures need to be in place to allow it to continue in a responsible way. Please put this burden where it belongs, not on the education of our students. I know that you all care about the education of our students. Please support and include the board's amendments to the APFO regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Any questions, colleagues? Thank you very much. Folks, I made one other oversight that I intended to do, and that was if there were any students in the room that wanted to testify. Usually we ask them to come up first so they can get home and do homework, and we're already keeping them out later than we wanted to. So I had one student, Lily Chadwick. If there are any other students in the K through 12, because we're all students in some fashion, please come on up in the front. So, Ms. Chadwick, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
My name is Lily Chadwick. I've lived in Howard County since I was 2. I go to St. John's Lane Elementary School, and hopefully Patapsco next year. I've heard a lot about the APFO in the last few weeks. My mom has tried to explain it to me, but there are some things I just don't understand. If the county council is supposed to represent the citizens, why would you listen to the developers and people who are just out to make money instead of listening to the people who live here? Just because there is one piece of land that doesn't mean you have to build 1 million houses on it. Trees are good to have around. I don't want more crowded schools. I don't want to have to change middle school before I even start. I don't want my mom to have to come home late from work and school because she was stuck in traffic. I don't want my big sister to have a 30-minute bus ride to Marriott's Ridge next year when she could just walk to Mount Hebron. There is a big field across the street from my house. Somebody wants to build like 200 townhouses there. My street would go from being a dead end to a busy road. There are a bunch of intersections near us that get really slow. My mom said that the developer only has to study one of those intersections because the requirements for traffic studies aren't very strong. That just seems wrong. Maybe this is complicated for grown-ups, but for a kid, it seems pretty easy to figure out. Developers should have to pay more to build schools if they want to build houses here. And we should have stronger rules for how much traffic is too much. People make stronger rules for the APFO. Our schools should be full at 100% instead of 120%. Our roads are already full, so we need more rules about studying traffic before houses are built. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. Again, thank you for being patient, and if you haven't already done so, I think it's time to do your homework. So. Anita Davis, Cindy Zhao, Sam Sabanda, Josh Greenfield, and Michael Herman. I have called your name. Please come to the chairs behind the podium. Thank you. Ms. Davis.
Good evening. My name's Anita Davis. I live at 3805 McAlpine Road in Ellicott City, and I've lived there for about 16 years, along with my husband. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in the democratic process. Perhaps you're wondering why I've not been involved before. Basically, I've counted on the democratic process, the task force, the county executive, the council to do the right things. But when this redistricting issues started coming up, I became more aware of the problematic APFO. And I'm now dismayed that despite months of deliberations by a task force, this legislation has been brought to you in its current form. The current APFO and the amendments proposed do not adequately address the needs for managing growth or provide funding for sustaining our highly prized, excellent school system. They don't address the needs for maintaining, improving, and expanding other basic infrastructure needs that increasing population and housing development require. In the proposed legislation, developers' fees and taxes remain untouched, and provision for additional growth is allowed. Our quality of life will be diminished as this continues, and in a few years, the very things that draw people to our community and promote the property values will decline or maybe even collapse. A truly holistic approach to intelligent urban design, planning, and managed growth is needed, as acknowledged in Howard County 2030, but the APFO doesn't cut it. APFO doesn't ensure that the infrastructure for additional development within established communities is actually adequate, and it will not be overcapacity when more homes are added. In my own neighborhood, our schools are overcrowded. The stormwater drainage system is literally crumbling, and it too is at capacity or soon will be over. All communities face these sorts of pressures. Somebody has to pay for infrastructure. And I do expect to pay my fair share. I also expect developers to do the same, and the council to prevent rampant growth from undermining the quality of life of our citizens. Developers are currently paying a one-time impact fee plus excise tax per dwelling. I have paid a fee every year for the past 16 years. It's called property tax. I urge the council to compare our developers' fees and taxes and transfer taxes with those in neighboring jurisdictions with comparably rated schools. And Howard County developers carry considerably less of the burden than in other jurisdictions. It seems the only people who've testified so far in favor of this legislation are developers. My question is, if this legislation is such a great idea for our community, where is the groundswell of support from the citizens who favor it?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We have Cindy Zhou. Ms. Zhou. Okay. Sam Sabanda. Sam Sabanda. Josh Greenfield. After Mr. Greenfield, we have Michael Herman, Gina Rodriguez, Jody Cosgrove. If you've called your name, please come to the seats.
Good evening,
Good
Chairman Weinstein, members of the council. Josh Greenfield with Maryland Building Industry Association. We are located at 11925 West Marketplace in Fulton, Maryland, so we are Howard County residents. You guys have all of our testimony. I sent you a number of charts and facts today. I'll be going over some of them briefly, but I don't want to take too much of your time. We're here in support of the compromise bill That was a work of 23 county residents over the course of 1 year. I want to talk a little bit about the makeup of the task force to correct some misstatements from last Monday. 23 members, 2/3 majority to pass any measure means that 7 members have to vote to kill anything and 14 have to pass. So it's simply not true that of the 4 members we had that we could kill or pass anything. In fact, I don't think that the development community passed any measures that it wanted. In fact, didn't propose them because they knew that they were dead on arrival. So, what was said last week just isn't really true. On the schools test, we already have the strictest Apfo schools test in the state, and we have the strictest growth control mechanism in the state. We're the only county in the state with allocations. We know exactly how many units are going to be built every year. We know exactly where they're going to be built. We know exactly what they're going to be. It's the most comprehensive growth control mechanism already in the state. On the schools test, we've never argued for more than 100% of capacity. We continue to argue for 100% of capacity. We're one of 3 counties in the state that use what's called the county-rated capacity rather than the state-rated capacity. I sent you a lot of information on this today, including Bruce Harvey's testimony that explains it better than I probably can. But roughly speaking, 120% of what we call county-rated capacity really equals 100% of state-rated capacity, and we continue to argue for that. And, we're going to continue to argue for that. Our members are residents here. They send their kids to schools. It's incredibly important, both for the residents and for business. Good schools create good markets. It's good for housing. We generate about 40% of new students in the schools. Building new houses, 60%, give or take, is existing residents and resales of homes. Many of these areas that have crowded schools are at rates that are too high. They're over 120%, which is what we've always argued for. And we haven't been able to build in them for years or even longer in time. So, it's hard to say that new construction is really what's generating this. On the fees, I sent you guys fee comparisons of every single county in the state this morning. On average, Howard County has the second highest development fees of any county in the state, only behind Montgomery County. You can't just talk about schools fees. You've got to talk about roads fees. You've got to talk about MIHU fees. MIHU fees are 2 times, roughly speaking, higher than the roads fees and the schools fees. So, we pay a lot when you're building a new house. This contributes to affordable housing, contributes to the county's overall affordability, or lack thereof, if these fees don't come and development is shut down. On the 100% capacity option, we oppose moving to 100% of what we'll call county-rated capacity, which is very different than state-rated capacity. This would shut down nearly every school for new development in the county. We just did a calculation. There would be 5 schools out of 42 that would be left open outside of the West, where there's very little development planned or will ever happen. If the county does want to move forward with this, we are going to ask for a full fiscal impact analysis, a full legal sufficiency analysis. I don't believe any of that has been done. This will cost millions, tens of millions of dollars a year in impact fees, property taxes, permit fees, income taxes, transfer taxes. The list goes on. It's likely to decimate the county's budget. Going to be hard to provide the vital services that your residents want and need: fire, police, trash, libraries, road maintenance, teachers, county staff cuts. We already plan. You voted for Plan Howard, which assumes a certain amount of growth both in residential and businesses over the next 15 or so years. If we slash development in the county, we won't hit those goals, and the county will suffer as a result. On affordable housing, we don't get any new affordable housing if no units are built, and shutting down the county to any housing will drive up prices and make it so that this community can't essentially have anybody who's of lower income coming into it. That's a real concern, I think. It's a real concern to me. And, finally, this bill is just drastically different from what was drafted. There's no economic impact analysis, no legal sufficiency analysis, no analysis of this impact on future school construction funding or any school funding. And you haven't heard from the thousands of residents, property owners, and businesses who will be affected. So we need a full hearing on it and full analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Any questions? Dr. Ball.
So, first of all, I'm not going to take a lot of time because there are people waiting. I will ask that you do come to our work session or someone from your group to go through this information that you sent earlier today. But I did want to speak to your point about the state-rated capacity issue. So what you're saying is that you would support 100% at state-rated capacity?
We would support, we've always argued for 100% state-rated capacity, which is about 120% of county-rated capacity. I'm not sure that the county should go ahead and change the mechanism it uses to calculate students. That's a
It
decision
kind of
way
sounds like
above
you're
my pay grade.
advocating for it, though.
That would actually be a higher number.
It would be,
If we did,
Yeah.
if
What
we
makes
did
you
It would be
say
a
that?
higher number.
If we did
It would-
100% of the
you would be
state-rated
comparable
capacity.
to the other counties
We would
across the
actually be at
state,
a higher number.
basically.
Maybe one thing that we can also do is ask the school system to come to our work session and have that conversation.
I think that would be really useful.
Yeah, no, I think
to hear
that's,
from them.
it's an important distinction I think you've made, though it is confusing, to be
It's
blunt.
very confusing.
That, that when we throw a number around and to, out of fairness of the people in the room who
Sure.
have this, this desire,
Yeah.
we need to be sure we understand what number, when we pick a number.
Right.
It has to be based on the number we all
Sure.
agree, is the accurate number. Because the state, we are,
Yeah.
based on the current, if I understand what you're saying, based on the current number, we're lower than the
That's
state's
correct.
rated capacity.
You're at about, we had made some assumptions in our numbers. The school board can speak to them with
Yeah,
better data.
I would feel more comfortable
Yeah.
hearing from
I think that's
the
reasonable.
school system.
Yeah, and,
But you're under 100% of state-rated capacity, based on our assumptions.
I'm not sure that's accurate, but
so,
thank you.
and, if you can, you did send some numbers over today, and, it would be helpful to walk through those together. I would ask you, to make sure you take a full look at the spreadsheet you sent, make sure
Sure.
it's fully accurate and
It
reflective
is
of.
accurate to the best of my knowledge, using the
Okay.
best numbers that I was able to
Okay,
find.
all right, well,
Yeah, I have
I'll
a
shoot you
question.
some questions in advance, if you don't mind, so that when you come to the work session, you can answer those specific ones. Mr.
No
Rossa?
problem.
Can you speak to, you said there's an MIHU fee?
Yeah, when you don't provide units on site,
So
particularly if you're,
you could provide affordable housing units.
well, if you build a single-family detached home, that's a one-off, for example, you pay a fee based on square footage, and square footage is all space in the home, including the basement and the garage. It's the same way.
So you're
it's
talking about if
constructed.
you decide not to build affordable housing?
No, that's different. If you're building a development with, let's say, 100 units, you're required to provide a certain amount of affordable housing as part of that development. If you are doing single-family detached homes, then you pay a fee in lieu, and I'm not aware of
So
any
fee
other
in
county.
lieu of affordable
Correct.
housing?
Yeah, otherwise
So you
you're mandated
could-
to provide it on site.
Isn't that what I just said? So you could build the affordable housing instead of having a fee?
You wouldn't build affordable housing on site if you just were building one or
You're talking about small developments.
infill development. Your requirement wouldn't meet one house, so you pay the fee in lieu.
Right, I think that's a good example, I think, in the spreadsheet, that, to know when it
Sure.
applies, when it doesn't, it's just,
Yeah,
so that's
otherwise-
part of, I think, a question that we
I-
have to.
I don't want to belabor this, but I don't think the major concern is the one person in an established neighborhood who builds an in-law house. I think the major concern are the developments that are dozens and hundreds of homes. And so while it may be the case that one person would maybe have to pay the fee in lieu fee, I'm not sure that
Well, all
that's
those,
that's
I'm sorry.
comparable. So I mean, I don't want to belabor it. We can talk about it
I would
and
just say
go
that
through the
those
data.
projects are mandated to provide affordable housing, which is unlike almost any other jurisdiction in the state as it is. So there's already a fee attached to all of those units. Let's see, Montgomery does it. I believe Frederick has a program, and to the best of my knowledge, those are the only counties that have mandatory moderate or low-income housing requirements. So, it's very hard to make these comparisons. It's not always apples to apples.
Yeah, we understand that. Thank you.
So we're doing our best to get you the most accurate data that we can.
We appreciate
And
it.
if you can, give some thoughts to, a couple of things. One, maybe if there wasn't that fee in lieu of those dollars were going towards schools or hospitals or both. And then the other would be potentially, for many of the many of the Route 1 homes that were changed from commercial and industrial zoning that I fought to high-density zoning that got approved by many of my colleagues, that really led to a lot of the issues with some of the overcrowding on Route 1. When those additional units got created from zoning changes, potentially having those have higher fees than stuff that had already been approved at certain levels of zoning.
They would still be subject to the allocations, which I think is
I
the
understand
ultimate
that, but
goal
I'm
too,
just talking
but
about
I
from a fee
understand. Yeah,
standpoint,
sure.
that if you didn't have that density, and now you're given that density, and it wasn't part of, other things that were being given, you potentially, if you had a school site that was given, if there was other parts of it that could be deducted, it would be that way. But, for example, if you looked at, like the Schneffenacher property and the numerous units there, we got, the one piece of property, but, we didn't get much else with that when that got approved.
So I think what you're getting a sense is lots of questions, and we appreciate the participation at the work
We'll
session.
Do our best to
Yeah,
answer as
appreciate
many
it.
questions as we can.
Can I just clarify? So did you say you support the bill as it is?
Yes, we supported the bill as drafted.
Okay, and you said you supported the compromise, what came out of the Apfo task force.
That's correct.
Is it your understanding that all of that is in this legislation?
I'm not sure. We support the bill as drafted, which embodies most of, if not all of, what the task force had decided. I can't tell you right now what may have been left out.
So you don't know whether it includes the reduction from 115 down to 110?
Well, that's not on the table now because that takes state enabling legislation, which we've supported that compromise, which is hard to come by in this development community. Some people like it, some people don't. But if it's good for the county, we could live with that.
So it's your understanding that we need state enabling legislation to reduce that number?
Well, we need the state enabling legislation to increase the impact fees by double or triple. We certainly believe that it's inappropriate to reduce that number on capacity before you have any ability to work with the impact fees.
So you understand that that's not in this bill?
Sure. My understanding is that will happen once the state enabling legislation occurs, and we will be supportive of it at that time.
You're supporting the state legislation?
We will also support the state legislation, but we would support the impact fee increases if they come before the council as well.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Michael Herman, Gina Rodriguez, Jody Cosgrove, William Nichols, and Vanessa Watney. Sir.
Good evening, members of the County Council. My name is Michael Herman, and I live in Elk Ridge at 6001 North Meyer Drive. I spent 6 hours last Monday and another evening today so I could testify against CB61 and CB62. I've committed a significant amount of my time to get this opportunity because of the importance that the Apfo proposal has in our lives. After hearing many hours of testimony last week, some from those that support the proposal, I want to take the little time I have to point out some of the flawed logic that was used by the supporters. The first argument is that setting the cap at 120% still allows the schools to fall within the state mandated levels of school populations. That's great and all, but this community, through our elected officials, have decided that we wanted to do more for our students. We decided what was 100%, and we should stick by that. If the 5 of you wanted to change that cap, you wield the power to submit a bill to do just that. But until then, we should abide by what our standards are, and 100% is full. Last week, the developers convinced one of their prospective clients to speak out in favor of the bill. He delivered a passionate speech about how his parcel of land was part of his retirement investment and how the bill would affect that. I truly feel some sympathy for him. However, any investment poses risk. And whenever we have a bear market, thousands of people have to put off their retirement. And honestly, this gentleman's still better off than all of them. No one is telling him he's lost his investment. He merely needs to wait for the schools to be built. And then he will be in a better boat because he'll have something that's in need. The developers point out that the new school growth comes from pre-existing homes. And on the surface, that is true, but a bit misleading. Over the past 10 years, on average, 470 new school seats were needed per year from only 1,000 new homes. Or in better terms, 47% of a school seat per new home built. In comparison, over the last 10 years, we needed 1,100 new seats from the over 104,000 existing homes in Howard County, or approximately 1% of a school seat per existing home per year. And don't forget, the new homes this year will be part of the existing homes for years to come. We really should add up how many new school seats are needed for a home over its entire lifetime. And I did the math. For each new home in Howard County, we need about 0.65 or 65% of a school seat over its lifetime. And given the cost of a school to be built, that would be roughly over $30,000 per new home needed just to build up our schools. More when you consider other things. Lastly, I know you asked the Office of Law to investigate the recent takings case in the Supreme Court. I hope that you make the analysis public that you get. We deserve to know what information you're basing your decisions on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Did you submit that? I was just looking for it.
I have a paper copy I could submit.
Okay, thank you. I'm making sure I didn't miss it in the email or,
Sure.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? No, thank you. So Gina Rodriguez, Ms. Rodriguez, Jody Cosgrove, William Nichols, Vanessa Watney, and Cynthia Sykes. After Ms. Sykes, I have Nikki Mansouris and Tim Morris.
Dear council members, my name is Gina Rodriguez and I live at 4053 Pebble Branch Road, Ellicott City, Maryland. Tonight, I would like to speak on behalf of the Latin American Council of Centennial High School and surrounding schools. I want to start by saying that the data is clear. Overcrowded schools affect the quality of education. I know this statement is the opposite of what some members of the Apfo Review Task Force believe. These members, associated with developers, believe that a good school is a good school regardless of overcrowding, that kids are getting a fine education in portables, and that Howard County should increase class sizes. However, research studies indicate that smaller classes can boost academic development and that minority and low-income students show even greater gains when placed in small classes. The diversity of the county and the quality of our school systems are some of the main factors that make our county attractive to residents and developers alike. However, we are concerned that the changes contained in CB61 will weaken Apfo in a moment where our schools are so overcrowded and in great need of relief. We are worried that the effect that overcrowding will have in the achievement gap for minorities. Not only drafting legislation for adequate public facilities under the false belief that overcrowded schools do not have a negative impact on the quality of education is misguided, it is also short-sighted because the education quality is what makes Howard County attractive. If Howard County keeps allowing growth that overcrowds schools, the county will lose its appeal and with that its tax revenue, as parents that value education will choose to live somewhere else. The adequate public facilities process, according to the policy document, should manage growth so that facilities can be constructed in a timely manner. Please amend CB61 to make school tests for elementary and middle schools be at 100%. The reason we want the Apfo test at 100% is because we want to make sure that we no longer find ourselves in a situation where our kids are stuffed in portables and in our size classes because the county is not building schools to keep up with new development. We do not want to stop development, but if our facilities are not keeping up with growth, development must slow down. We want the school test at 100% because even though development may only add short of 50% of the new students, these new additions are putting a lot of pressure in some of our schools. Kids only get one chance at kindergarten, only one chance at first grade, and so on. Please amend CB61 to include a high school test. Although the Apfo Review Task Force voted against a high school test, when making that decision, the task force did not take into consideration the high cost and lengthy timeline of building a high school. Building a high school takes almost 3 times as long and costs 3 times as much as building an elementary school.
Thank you, ma'am.
I thought I had 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you not have the 5 minutes set up? So I'm sorry, you have 2 more minutes, yes.
Okay. Based on that, growth in areas where high schools are over capacity needs to slow down. In addition to having a longer building time, finding a land site for high schools is difficult. The county as a whole has just a little bit over 10% of undeveloped land. Today, the county-wide utilization of high school is over 100%, and we still do not have a site identified for building the next high school. Please amend CB61 to ensure that there are no reductions to the current wait time for allocations and school tests, and lengthen the wait time for when schools are over 120% capacity. The task force narrowly voted against a measure that would have increased the wait time for school tests for schools that are over 120% capacity. Per Appendix B of the task force report, the reason for not passing this change is because, and I quote, heightened overcapacity does not result in lower quality education, which makes further slowing down of development unwarranted. Dear council members, you might remember from last week the vivid detailed testimony of an 8-year-old girl that currently attends an elementary school that is at 127% utilization. Are you willing to look at that girl directly in her eyes and tell her that heightened overcapacity does not result in lower quality of education? Please prioritize the interest of our children over that of developers so that Howard County can continue to be a beacon in excellence and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions, colleagues?
Yep, definitely.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Actually, not a question, just, looking at your charts, and actually, they point out a couple of good things. There's also a couple other things, to be aware of. So on the good side is that we see a substantial increase in the amount of preservation easements and open space and parkland, which is, that's from what you're showing is basically preservation easements have doubled, and open space parkland has increased by 50% during the period of time. While the developed residential hasn't increased that much, but the problem, which this doesn't show, which is just to help what you're saying, is actually it's the density, and a lot of that, again, was on some of those Route 1 zoning decisions. So it's not just the acreage, it's the proportion and density and the balance that we had previously that has changed over time. So that's another one of the things. There's been some good things, and there's been some other things that may not be as good as far as in those balances. And some of that comes into the economics of what we can afford as well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jody Cosgrove? All right, folks, I'm going to call a few more names while Ms. Cosgrove has a seat. William Nichols, Vanessa Watney, Cynthia Sykes, Nick Matsouras, Tim Morris, Joanne Heckman. If you are here, please have a seat behind the podium. Ma'am.
Okay. My name is Jody Cosgrove. I live at 9217 Victoria Drive, Ellicott City. I am representative of St. John's Lane Elementary School PTA. I'm the vice president there. The SJLES PTA urges you to create a stronger APFO that limits building and overcrowding in schools. Overall student achievement and safety is not secondary to the developer's financial gain. St. John's Lane is currently over capacity. It was built in 1959 and was designed to accommodate 612 students. The enrollment is currently at 703, which is 117.3 above capacity as of now. If just one proposed development added 244 more students, that would balloon the enrollment to 947. The 2017 feasibility study then put the school's enrollment at a projected 141%. This is how only one single development will pack students into a building that can't adequately accommodate them. Please note that there are other project developments within St. John's Lane boundaries that will even further balloon the school's enrollment. Without limitations in overbuilding, you will have successfully reduced the overall quality of education. In addition, overcrowded schools present safety and security concerns. Currently, there are 7 portables at this school over the past 10 years. The use of portables was used to temporarily fix an overcrowded problem. That does not sound temporary to me. Any person can walk up to a portable classroom during the day without being checked into the front office. Students walk to and from the main building to the portables frequently during the day, making them more vulnerable to a child predator and can be harmed. The Office of Risk Management states 10 elementary schools that have open space configurations will be modified to become more secure. Are you willing to accept the liability of a child's safety? This alone should be a reason to limit reckless building. There are other examples in addressing the traffic safety. There are developed attempts in addressing this concern. For example, the plans to create a pedestrian crosswalk that crosses an already heavily commercial and residential area where there is already existing traffic. By placing this type of crosswalk, and the developer places the pedestrians, including your students, as well as other car passengers, in high risk and being struck by a car. In addition, a proposed developer in this area wishes to place high-density living spaces near a high school. Included in their plans, they want to include senior citizen housing, which will place senior citizen driving in close proximity to high school students on an increasingly overcrowded road. Both types of drivers are high risk. All these new added cars from families, senior citizens, and high schoolers will obviously increase the risk of car accidents and fatalities. Again, these fatalities will be your liability. Finally, I'm going to highlight some very questionable arrangements, this speaking on behalf of myself, not the PTA. The APO allows the developer to contract their own traffic studies. As a result, the increase in the chance of results being skewed or swayed to the benefit of the developers. Please consider discontinuing this practice of developers to handing down their own traffic study. In addition, in Mr. Frazier's testimony last week, he had made developer-friendly statements that are inaccurate. He tried to state that our schools are at 98 and 100% capacity throughout the county, and we are well within those operable limits. This is absolutely false. Too many of our schools do not fall within his quoted percentages, SJLES being one of them. Mr. Frazier states that 60% sales come from resales of home. If that is the case, then why the huge push for high-density homes? These stats suggest that the remaining 40% are made for new construction, which is significant. Also, in closing, it is telling that residents are united in their opposition, and the only ones against it are those who stand to make a profit at our expense. Please ask yourself, are you, as a council, really representing the citizens of Howard County's best interests, or are you acting on behalf of developers? Are you, as a council, ready to claim responsibility of children's liabilities based on your decisions right here tonight? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cosgrove. Any questions, colleagues? William Nichols. Mr. Nichols. Okay. Vanessa Watney. Ms. Watney. We have Cynthia Sykes. See you there. Okay. Nikki Mansouris, Tim Morris, Joanne Heckman.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Watney, and I reside at 2917 Greenlow Court. Please bear with me. Public speaking is a fear of mine, but the fear of not speaking up, of what might happen if I don't speak up, is much worse than if I don't. My family and I moved to the Valley Mead neighborhood earlier this year for the same reasons that the majority of our neighbors seem to share: the schools. While I had some knowledge of possible redistricting prior to moving to the neighborhood, I was admittedly not as well informed as I should have been about the APFO and current proposed changes contained in CB61. My concerns with CB61 are as follows. I am concerned about current and proposed development projects that bring tax revenue, businesses, and new residents to our county, but that do not adequately fund the critical services and infrastructure necessary to support a growing population: schools, fire, police, community centers, and protect our quality of life. As a mother and someone who specifically moved to this area for the quality of the community and its schools, I paid a very high premium for access to them. I am concerned that if the county doesn't do a better job controlling and planning for development, the schools will be forced to redistrict again in 2 to 3 years. Redistricting has several potential ramifications, including increased costs for busing students to schools that are further away, increased time students spend on buses to get to school, and those buses would add to the already congested local roads in the area. Our neighborhood schools are already over capacity in many instances and have portable classrooms on school property to accommodate the existing student population. which not only present health and safety concerns for our children, but also affect the quality of teaching and learning that is provided. Lastly, I'm concerned that my property taxes will be increased to make up for the low development fees that developers pay in our county to increase density, but not services or infrastructure to support their development in our community. I'm requesting that CB61 is amended with the following provisions to more fairly and equitably balance well-planned growth and effective mitigation for our public infrastructure. School capacity limits, including high schools, to be set at 100%. Mitigation begins when a school reaches 95% capacity. No reductions to the current wait time for housing allocations or school tests. APFO needs to be reviewed every 4 years. Increase real estate transfer tax to account for resale contributions. In conclusion, I think it is worth noting that the only people that are in opposition of APFO are developers. The residents of Howard County are here, and we are united in our opposition of CB61. And the only ones who stand to make, that are for it, are those who stand to make a profit at our expense. It is my hope that our county executive will agree that all the statements above and do what is right for the residents of Howard County. I'm sure it goes without saying that my vote in 2018 will depend largely on how my representatives support.
Thank you, ma'am.
What I
Thank you very much, and thank you for your willingness to testify. Cynthia Sykes. We have Nikki Mansouris, Tim Morris, Joanne Heckman, and Gillian Marc.
Okay. Good evening, Council. Thank you. Glad to be back in front of you again. So I wanted to come out in support of stronger APFO. We are not a depressed area. We don't need supplements for building. We don't need supplements to developers. When I look at what's happening with our schools and the neighbor on neighbor, your constituents are fighting each other over resources. Is that okay for you as lawmakers, that we're arguing over schools and who goes where, and longstanding neighborhoods are being bumped out, and Howard County is being rumored to say that we're closed to outside? That's not okay. That's not okay. And the responsibility for you all as lawmakers is to help keep the peace with the resources that are there. So I have a couple questions on why. I heard a developer say we had a great comprehensive school plan. Well, I've met with our county executive. I've been to the AAC meetings. I've been to the school board meetings, and they seem not to have a great coordination as to where the schools were supposed to be. We need planning. We need funding. We're very happy that promises like a new school is coming and we're promised $50 million, but how are we going to pay for this? When you're looking at $7,000 per school from the developers as opposed to like $35,000 in Montgomery County is what I've heard, we're behind. We've been behind. How do you catch a moving target unless you increase the fees? Do you raise taxes on the taxpayers that we're already charging? Or do you let the people who have the responsibility to contribute, as one developer said, to be a good fiscal citizen from a different state, do you let them get a continued discount? So yes, we're looking at, APFO should be reviewed every 4 years. We should have higher transfer recordation taxes. Resales do play into that, so yes, that's part of it. And then also, high school tests. I don't know who thinks people who move into Howard County don't have high schoolers, but we do. We do. And they need seats in our schools. So when you look at CB51, not only is it hugely important, and you look at other counties like Anne Arundel that have done it right at 100%, but let me give you a quick history lesson about the current APFO standards. They're 10 years old, right? 10 years old? 14. 2007, the first iPhone came out. This can't wait, okay? Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. GM, Ford, Chrysler bailout was 2009. How old is this bill? This can't wait. This has to be done now. Osama bin Laden, they managed to find him in 2011, okay? We are so far behind. We need funding for roads. We need funding for schools. So as I listened to the first half of this meeting talking about accelerating development, the second half, we're talking about
Thank you, Ms.
slowing
Sykes.
things down.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Any questions? Nikki Mansouris? Ms. Mansouris? No? Okay. Tim Morris? Mr. Morris? Joanne Heckman? Ms. Ekman, I think she left, okay. Gillian Marc, do I have a taker? Excellent. Ms. Marc, and after Ms. Marc, we have Wayne Miller, Nick Nichols, and Deb Young.
Good evening, Chairman Weinstein and members of the County Council. My name is Gillian Marc, and I live at 4054 High Point Road in Ellicott City. One of the remarkable things about Howard County is how it exists as a melting pot within the larger one we take pride in as Americans. My next-door neighbors on both sides are immigrants from 2 different countries. My husband and I are Midwest natives settled here with the time and tides of military service. It is interesting that our 3 families came here from very different backgrounds, above all other options for one primary thing: schools. Everyone knows throughout Maryland, throughout the region, that schools are what Howard County does extraordinarily well. Even throughout the military community worldwide, we've known for a very long time that if you can get to Fort Meade, you can live in Howard County and your children can have very good schools. We navigate and alter the course of careers to get here so that our children can be educated here. This is the kind of attractiveness that municipalities all over our country would love to have. It's what has landed Howard County on greatest places to live lists year after year. So I guess the golden question is, where is the breaking point? When will we outdevelop our desirability if the growth continues, but the investment in infrastructure does not? Howard County schools are important to me, but in addition to being a parent to 2 teenagers, one a recent graduate of and one a freshman in the Howard County public school system, I am a small business owner. I've built my business here in Ellicott City, which was affected by the Main Street floods. I was moved by the show of community in the wake of that disaster and felt a great pull of a place that I wanted to call home. The aftermath of that, though, was my first awakening to the challenge of infrastructure in such a rapidly growing county. Many questioned the role of development and stormwater mitigation. I'm not an engineer, but my mind has gone back to this as the current redistricting drama has unfolded. Just how much of our critical infrastructures and amenities are we challenging at the present rate of growth? What will our next emergency be? I hear a lot of mention of the need to create growth so that businesses want to be here, how a stagnant population doesn't encourage new business, which doesn't bring increasing tax revenue. But here I am at a crossroads. I'm a business owner who came here with the intent on starting it here and building it here because I wanted to raise my children in a stable environment with a truly outstanding school system. Here I am, feeling like a bit of a fool. Had I known how little developers pay for the green light to build here, had I known how overcrowded schools had to be before even slowing the burgeoning sprawl, had I known that dirty little word called infill.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have your testimony that you can
I
send
did.
as well? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Mr. Miller? And after Mr. Miller, we're going to have to take a break to reset our system because we've been at this for 3 hours. So, very good.
My name is Wayne Mello. I live at 5665 Lightspun Lane, Columbia, Maryland. I'm in District 2. My wife and I have lived in Howard County for 6 years, and like many others, were attracted to the area by the open spaces and great schools. I commute to Northern Virginia every day so my child can attend Howard County and not change schools again. I'd like to say there's 2 strategies for living in Howard County with kids. 1, buy your home and roll the dice that you get a better school when the redistricting comes around every 3 to 5 years. 2, buy the home you like in the neighborhood you love with the schools that you feel are best suited for your child and pray that they don't redistrict. The reason for the constant redistricting is a weak APFO, which does not adequately fund the schools that are required by the additional homes. We are trying to pay for the schools we already need by building more homes. This reminds me of the old retail joke. We lose money on every sale, but we make it up in volume. In Howard County, 10 to 15% of the houses must meet MIHU with ranges up to $322,000 for townhomes. In Montgomery County, 10 to 15% MPFU, up to $165K. So if anything, Howard County is allowing for more funding more money on funding of less costly housing. Let me share some statistics with you. Between 2006 and 2016, Howard County, based on 2,000 square feet home, the developer fees have increased from $3,660 to $4,840. Schools, $2,060 to $2,500. Montgomery County, the fees have increased from $16,250 to $40,793. Don't let the developers tell you that they're not making money on our backs. I proved it up when I said it a while ago. Since 2008, the fees have been over $30,000. Since you have heard testimony last week, some information has come out that the new high school, according to an article in the Baltimore Sun, Kittleman, the county's responsibilities for the new high school will be approximately $35,318. Sounds a lot like Montgomery County, and have a capacity of 15 seats. Let's examine if you were to fund the school in Montgomery County versus Howard County. In Montgomery County, you would need to sell 1.6 houses per seat, assuming 50% of the money goes to schools, or 2,584 homes. In Howard County, you would need to sell 14 houses per seat, or 22,610 homes. Since we can't legislate that only 1 in 14 of the newly built homes can have kids in the school, the system probably needs to be adjusted. I realize the fees for high schools I realize there are other fees for the high schools, but I can't imagine the tax structure being that different between Howard County and Montgomery County. We desperately need money to fund the infrastructure so that people can continue to move to Howard County for the open spaces and great schools. In closing, I'm against. Additionally, I want this item. I do not want this item tabled. I want a vote.
Thank you, sir.
Let's not act like Congress and kick the can down the road.
Thank you, sir. Okay, folks, we're going to take about a 7 to 10 minute break while we reset our system. We'll be right back. If you could please have a seat. Okay, we left off with Nick Nichols. Mr. Nichols. Nick Nichols. Yep, okay. Deb Young. And after Ms. Young, we have Tim Burkhardt, Russell Kenyon, and Prasanth Suravenkata.
I'll give this to you.
Good evening again. My name is Debra Young. I reside at 10913 Great Oak Way, Columbia, Maryland, 21044. And this is testimony regarding CB61 and CB62. First, I want to thank you for allowing the public additional time to speak out on this topic. I know that this is night 3, and you all have been very patient about listening to all this testimony. I do agree with all those who have testified that the school capacity test should be capped at 100% of capacity and include high schools in the capacity testing. It is my hope that the council will go even further and revise the Apfo test, school test, and base it upon current year enrollment and projections 3 to 5 years in the future. Exclude portables or other temporary classroom space from the school capacity test. Create enough flexibility in the school capacity test that will allow the council to grant partial approval of a project if school capacity is only available to accommodate a portion but not all of the students generated by a project. I also support increasing the wait period for development to begin from 4 years to 6 years for developers who are seeking to build new homes in areas where schools are more than 100% capacity. Numerous local jurisdictions have longer wait periods than Howard County, and it's doubtful that the desire to build in this county will dissipate during that time. I urge the council not to exclude age-restricted units from the allocation test with regard to road testing. The 2 new large continuing care treatment facilities are in the planning phases right now, one that will be located off of Route 108 behind Free State Gas Station, and the other on Martin Road. While I totally support the development of these facilities that will enable us to keep our rapidly aging population in Howard County, the roads surrounding these proposed facilities are 2 lanes, and 108 in particular has become a traffic nightmare during certain times of the day. The proposal for Erickson living at Limestone Valley in Clarksville includes 1,200 independent living units and 240 plus care units. Between the independent living units, the continuing care units, the employees of such a facility, and visitors, this facility may generate thousands of additional car trips each day, greatly increasing road usage and likely requiring the expansion of 108 and perhaps Martin Road after the facilities are fully built. There is no reason. Finally, it's time to increase this also touches upon our need to include hospital use and emergency responsibility in our APFO test with our increasing age population and the potential attractiveness of these two new facilities being built in Howard County. There is no doubt that further stress will be put on our Howard County General Hospital and our fire department's emergency response service. Growth will continue in Howard County, about that there is no doubt, but we need to make sure that it is controlled, sensitive to our environment, doesn't create congested roads and overcrowded schools, and allows us to maintain the quality of our life.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Okay. Tim Burkhardt, Mr. Burkhardt? Nope, okay. If you can, you'll have to wait till the end, sir. Mr. Burkhardt had signed up. Russell Kenyon. Russell Kenyon, Prasanth Suravenkata. Okay. Tanya Tiffany. Kiran Tatavardi. Are you? Yeah. Yep. You're up, sir. I was just calling the other folks again. If I call your name, please. Please come to the chairs behind here. So after Mr. Suravenkata, we have Tanya Tiffany, Kiran Tatavardi, Vasavi Tatavardi, and Shruti Tatavardi. Sir.
Good evening. My name is Prashant Suravenkata. I live at 8798 Welford Drive, zip code 21042. I actually moved from Virginia. I lived in Virginia for 13 to 14 years, and 2 years ago, we decided to move here solely because of where our kids are and the schools, and we thought we made a life-changing decision. I continue to commute to Northern Virginia every day. We feel that we're being deceived here because last year we took a life-changing decision to buy a home here, only to be told this year that, hey, there is a huge potential of being redistricted to a different school. Just 2 years ago, kids have changed the schools. I just think that the whole system, the whole framework in which we are working here is flawed. We have 3 independent organizations taking decisions, one being esteemed council here, second one HCPSS, and then BOE. This whole thing about AFO being strong just for the new homes, I think something is also missing. If you look at the open-closed chart definition itself, the basis that BOE comes up with open-closed chart, it is supposed to give available openings for the next 10 years, predictions for next 10 years, based on not just new builds, based on not just the housing unit allocation. It's also based on the demographics, based on the growth rate, sale of existing homes, things like that. So I just think that we feel being punished here, and we are ready to take a decision to move out of the county. And I also, my humble, advice or opinion is, starting tomorrow morning first thing, before everything gets settled here, please make it a point to put it in bold letters that people who are buying the homes, existing or new, doesn't matter, just say that, hey, there is a very high likelihood that your home will be redistricted, your school will be redistricted, and just based on that, people will make a choice. So, and I'm totally appalled at the state currently, because just because someone comes and raises a voice, people who are working for redistricting kids, they're classifying as, hey, you hate this school or you hate that school. So there is a huge hate discussion, divisive discussion going on in this county, and I'm absolutely, just speechless on this. It's just, this is not right. This is, I feel this is a sophisticated way of cheating, because I come here, I buy the home, and just one organization like council comes and says, hey, you can go buy this home, whether it's a new home, right? And then county HCPS comes and says, look, this is all messed up. We're going to redistrict. So yeah, based on that. So
thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. Tanya Tiffany. Ms. Tiffany. After Ms. Tiffany, we have Kieran Tatavardi, Vasavi Tatavardi, Suthi Tatavardi, and Stephanie Tuitt, and Lisa Hamlicker. If I've called your name, please come forward. Good evening.
Please forgive my voice. I am getting bronchitis soon. My name is Tanya Tiffany. I live at 10702 Judy Lane, Columbia, Maryland. I support the Board of Education's recommendations for the APFO, as well as Mr. Zhang's idea to strengthen our roads test and maybe create a sliding scale dependent upon the size of development for new roads. I have two major concerns with our overcapacity usage in regards to particularly the portables. My first safety concern is January of 2016, Glenwood Middle School had a fire. They were lucky enough that the whole school was able to evacuate to the elementary school across the parking lot. They were also lucky because they are under capacity. This past year, my kids' elementary school at Clemens Crossing was on a lockdown because there was, within the neighborhood, there was an active shooter situation. That was resolved, but you had all those kids in those portables, and it's a dangerous situation. My second concern deals with the horrible conditions of some of our portables in our schools, as we'll get to the pictures in a second, and the compromised air quality and structural stability. I have some of the photos that were taken as a group of us have been working on this mold issue since everything started back in, 2014? So when we first started finding out about the mold is when we really started becoming concerned about the portables. We've been on this for a very long time. So without further ado, so this is what I consider to be a major mar on what is supposed to be one of the best school systems in our country. Our portables are like an ugly eyesore, not only internally and externally. So we start off with, sorry, you guys can't see the pictures, rust and mold and on some of the buildings, just on the front door. It's so bad that it's already been painted over and it's re-rusted. Then you come to number 3. This is Hammond High School. Sorry, I have them numbered. And the landing is on cinder blocks. And if you look at the door, it's not even that. There's no way there's a decent seal on that door. You can see the gapping. Go to picture number 4. That is at Howard High School. I'm not even sure how that landing is standing. If you look on those cinder blocks, some suckers are all askew. That sucker looks like it's about to fall any minute. You go to Hammond, which is number 5. You have a 2x4 propping up the other stuff, the landing.
Thank you for these. One question, Ms. Tiffany. Have you shared these with the school system?
These have definitely been shared with the school system,
Very
but
good.
this was also, if you look at the second to last one, number 14, that is an air vent at Glenwood Middle School in one of the portables. When it was taken, there were kids in that building, or had been at that building that day. Fortunately, that portable has been taken out of commission. However, that is the condition that some of our schools and some of the portables get to. So when we talk about all these issues with the portables, it's not just the kids, being in the rain, being in the snow, which is the last picture, going to and from the different classes. It's the safety concerns. When I talk with the elementary school teachers, they have a policy where a staff person is supposed to escort the kids. Well, we're understaffed. There's not enough staff roaming around the schools to be able to do potty runs. So it's kind of a problem. So I'm just asking
Thank
for
you.
a more stringent APFO. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just
Mrs.
wanted to say,
Charles.
as somebody whose daughter goes to school in one of those portables. I really appreciate you bringing that to everyone's attention.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Kieran Tatavardi, Vasavi Tatavardi, Suthiv Tatavardi. Okay. Stephanie Tewitt, Lisa Hamlicker, Robert Burks, Gautam Chatur, and Saritha Anapakula. Ma'am.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Toot. I live at 6905 Deer Valley Road in Highland, Maryland. I've lived and worked in Howard County for 23 years. I have two kids, two daughters, that are in Dayton Oaks Elementary School, which happens to be one of the schools that's under capacity at around 75%. And I just wanted to make people aware that some of these same issues do exist in the undercapacity schools. My third grader last year was in a classroom of 27. This year in fourth grade, she's in a classroom of 29. So some of the overcrowding or lack of teachers still goes through some of these undercapacity schools as well as some of the ones that are overcapacity. Of course, we don't have the portable issues, but you know, the classroom sizes are still an issue regardless of what school system you're in. You can be in the undercapacity or the overcapacity, they're the same. I also wanted to say that, you know, everybody thinks that Apfo is the answer to changing some of these situations. The thing is some of these things are school board issues. Some of them are, nobody wants to listen to redistricting. I know everybody's against it. But if I knew that my child was going to be in a situation that was better for them, where there was less crowding or there was a more environmentally friendly situation for them, I would not be against it. There are some of these districts, mine is one of them, that sits next to 110 capacity. There's another school district, which is Clarksville Elementary School. It is sitting next to Fulton, which is 125. So some of these redistricting lines changing, and if they make sense, that is, if they're changed to make sense, they can fix some of this overcapacity, and they can make some of these lesser school districts more utilized. So I wanted to bring that forward because a lot of people don't really realize that some of these things do exist no matter where you are. So I just wanted to say that, and just by stopping development doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to solve the problem, because if you lessen development, that means tax dollars that aren't going to the schools as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing some up, because there's actually some of the issues that are being brought up, I think, are very valid issues that are out there. Yours are too, and I was actually talking to one of the folks that were out there, and it's trying to make sure that everybody really understands some of the balance between some of them, because it's not one thing leads you one direction, one thing leads you another direction. Because one of the questions I wanted to ask a hypothetical to folks, were, I was actually going to hit Mr. Walsh since I actually knew him and everything. So I'm just going to put this one out there, whether you want to answer it or just for people to think about. Is in areas that may not even have new development but become overcrowded just as resales of homes occur, should those homes be at 100% and the community get redistricted anyway into those neighboring schools? Or should those end up having portables to be able to support the community to be stable? And I don't know what the right answer is. I'm asking that hypothetical because I think part of that's one of the reasons why some of the redistricting hasn't occurred as much recently, was because people, I can tell you, when I first came to the county, redistricting happened a lot more than it happens now. It happened, I mean, when we were going through it, people would be in 3 and 4 different elementary schools, one kid. It was not uncommon for that to occur. It is not as common as it is now. Excuse me, it's more common. It was more common then than it is now. And so, it becomes one of those things. So even outside of the development issue and some of the things with the fees, I don't disagree with many of those things, and I look forward to talking about them more. But as we hit that whole issue on the capacity of a single school, how, there's different parts of it. One having to do with development and being closed, but when it's not, you still want it to be at 100% and force a redistricting.
Well, I know in our case, we moved there 5 years ago, and we heard rumor 5 years ago that they were redistricting for the middle school. Right. That still has not happened 5 years ago. Right. we kept getting told that we'd be in Fulton Middle School, which right now, for the last 5 years, our area is still in Limekiln. So just because there's rumor of it doesn't mean it's really going to happen either. So, I mean, it is what it is, but, you know, people just need to understand that some of these things, the way things are calculated is not always the same. I know there's been stuff thrown out about, you know, the school capacity being the county's version as opposed to the state's. They're very complicated how they calculate them, and they're not the same. One might be based on, you know, square footage, might be based on something else. They're not equal. You would almost have to reassess them at the way each of them is being calculated.
Right, and it's
to
not as
be
much.
able to compare.
Right, and then the other issue on the undercapacity side, not as much of an issue in elementary and middle, but at high school, if you start becoming underutilized, you also don't have all the same programming that a school that has more students in it has, as far as options for APs and other classes, which becomes another issue.
True.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Tuitt. I have Lisa Heimlicher, Robert Burks, Gautam Chatur, Sarita Anapakula, and Jim Walsh. Those are the last. Sorry?
I'm Gautam.
Very good, sir. Then, assuming that Lisa Heimlicher and Robert Burks are not here, sir, you are next. Thank you.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Chairman Weinstein, members of the council, good evening. My name is Gautam Chatur. My family moved into 8705 Belford Drive, Ellicott City, just a few months back. So I could send my 2 daughters to some of the best schools in the country. In my personal opinion, I represent a community of families that could possibly be the worst affected in Howard County. Let me tell you why, and thanks to this redistricting drama. My first and the greatest concern is that the permission that this council grants, and I'm going to say the names of few developers, Toll Brothers, to build new houses in an overcrowded Centennial High School district, while Beezer Homes, who built my community, is being asked to move our houses to a different school district. I don't understand how this happens. We are not even finished construction. We have been asked to move out because Centennial School District is overcrowded, yet builders are building new communities with houses who will send their kids to these schools. So that's my first concern. The second concern, that because of redistricting in this December, the council will be indirectly helping 100 houses in my community to go underwater with their mortgage loans. Our community stands to lose as much as $30 million in our investments because of the redistricting effort, which concludes in November of this year. The majority of our new community is not made of CEOs and business owners. We will lose our retirement savings, and some of us would be forced to foreclose our houses. My third concern is that the families that see their mortgages go underwater will then start promoting the hazards of buying new houses in Howard County with their social circle. The council has the power to stop such negativity. I urge the council to support Dr. Zhang's recommendations for stronger rules for transportation approvals for the new communities. I also request the council that they close the 3 loopholes that Dr. Chow originally proposed, include high school and capacity limit test, not allow new developments to skip capacity test if they have failed in the last 4 times, and include 15% medium and low income housing cap for every new development. Please prioritize the needs of families and kids and not the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Oh, I do, real quick. On your third one, I just want to make sure I understood. When you're saying the 15% medium and low income housing, that was a cap, not a minimum?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And may I, you mentioned to the previous speaker about that redistricting is sort of a way of life, and that.
Well, I didn't just say it was a way of life, but I'm just saying it's actually become less of a way of life.
Sure, but it's still a way of life. There have been concerns around, like, data is a primary driver on how these redistricting efforts happen. We just request the council for support if that the data being used in redistricting is used properly and not abused, because we don't have access to all the data which is being used for redistricting. So if in case we have been petitioning you guys on the data errors, so please help us out.
I can only speak for myself, and I imagine my colleagues have probably had similar conversations with the superintendent and other folks in the school that make sure they absolutely review and validate every piece of data that they've done to make sure that any assessments they make, any decisions they make are based on valid data. So
Yeah.
it is, and I was in your neighborhood, that concern was raised to me, and I brought that specific concern to the school system.
I appreciate that.
No, it's, I mean, but it's a very good point, and one of the previous speakers talked about the split, you know, between the three different organizations. It is a fundamental flaw in the state system. And I think at any one time on certain issues, if we had the ability and authority to make certain decisions for the school system, we'd be happy to do that. And similarly, I think if you ask that question to the Board of Education, they'd probably say the same thing about us. So, okay. Well, so there might be something there for you, sir. We can talk offline about that. But.
And I would encourage you or anyone here, you know, we did have a meeting discussing some of this publicly with the school board. That is available online. It brought up some of the issues. I don't want to rehash them all, but, you know, I was involved with the school redistricting battle back in 2000, 2001. You know, talk a little bit about that and some of those things. I think it'd be worth checking that out online.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Saritha Anapakula. Okay. Jim Walsh. Mr. Walsh.
Good evening. My name is Jim Walsh. I live at 16135 Ed Warfield Road in Woodbine. It's clear that our current adequate public facilities ordinance is not working properly. It was originally enacted in 1992 and certainly has not kept up with a lot of changes both in state law and in subsequent development in Howard County since then. Because of our quality of life and our location, particularly our schools, we are a very desirable location, and I fear that we're going to be a victim of our own success because as more and more people understandably want to live in Howard County, we could end up killing the goose that laid the golden egg. I remember there was a story about Yogi Berra talking about a restaurant, and he commented that nobody goes there anymore because it's too crowded. And I think that that's what Howard County might be headed for. There are several reversions I believe that we should make to our APFO. I think that we should ratchet down in increments our trigger point from the current 115% to 100%. I think high schools should be included in the analysis. I think the moratorium should be increased from 4 years to 5 years. And I think that we should also include fire and rescue services in the analysis for adequate public facilities. The whole purpose of APFO is to give us a little bit more breathing room so that we can keep ahead of development and preserve our quality of life, and I hope the council would consider these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fox?
So if you get a chance, you don't have to answer now since we're at the end of the night, hopefully. But
I could go all night, Mr. Fox.
I know you can. I feel it's a little dangerous. I may even ask you the question. But,
yes, it might be.
But the first three, I understand where you're coming from. Don't really need any more detail on it. But your thoughts, whether now or in writing, as far as on what type of thing you would be even looking at on fire and rescue service, like what would be those?
Well,
triggers?
I'm not an expert in the field, admittedly. I like to think I am in many types of fields, but I've heard a lot of that bandied about, and that fire and rescue and police should be considered. Police are more portable. I mean, they have patrol cars. They can allocate their resources more quickly or reallocate their personnel more quickly. That's not necessarily the case with fire and rescue, where you have to have a fire station within X minutes of arrival of a call, so that I think that that's a different subject where we definitely need to look at it differently than we do at police.
Okay, I was just curious what you were looking at from the triggers, that's all.
All right, great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there anybody who we have not called who has not testified previously that would like to testify? If you would, please come to the chairs and I'll call you. If not, so there's a gentleman here, yes, I appreciate that. And yeah, why don't you step up? You've been sitting right there. Come right in. Please, you have to come to the podium, and we need your name and your address. And
thank you so much for being here. My name is Tanya Lopez, and I live 3717 Valley Road, Ellicott City, Maryland. I am not in the polygon, which is up to rezoning. However, I am a professional engineer, civil, and my whole career was in land development and water resources. I came here to serve the obligation to the society per Code of Ethics of Professional Engineers. I represent Don Logan, and I studied this area. However, I would like to talk on behalf of all the civilians as an expert of subject of matter. Don Logan, I would like to talk about polygons 150, 1150, and 4150. These three polygons have two bus routes. One is going south, another is going north, splitting the traffic flow into two directions. This is the most favorable condition. Why? Because at the present, the buses in the morning and afternoon go against the flow, the traffic. If you ever been to Don Logan neighborhood, you would notice that the roads are very narrow, maybe 22 feet, built sometimes in 60s. They don't meet water requirement. They don't have storm drain. They have open channel flows. Many people told that it has bonding water. It has a lot of pedestrians and a lot of cars going from Frederick to Route 29. So this being said, and also there is proximity of schools and parallel parking. This being said, the traffic flow south through the development and adding the buses with 10 feet on both sides is a public safety hazard. And also, I would like to talk on behalf of the whole Howard County, because even busing children from our development to Wild Lake also, instead of going through safe routes, they will go either via 29 or they will cross very dangerous intersections, as many other buses which up to rezoning. I would request to consider public safety first during any rezoning process. And also, please go to Don Logan and see for yourself how many parked vehicles we have during school events. It is just impossible to walk here. Thank you so much for your time, and it is just nice to be here.
thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Any questions, colleagues? Thank you. So we'll just start from my left, right there, and we'll just work our way across. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I submitted my testimony electronically about a week and a half ago, and this is the abridged version. So, my name is Michael Thompson. I live at 9806 Michael's Way, and I'm here tonight representing the Howard County Association for Responsible Planning, whose address is P.O. Box 7061, Ellicott City 21042. And we oppose CB61. I'm an ecologist, and I make my living performing watershed assessments, restoring streams, and retrofitting stormwater facilities throughout most of Maryland. I essentially spend everyone in the room's rain tax. We have heard quite a bit about schools, so I'm going to skip that part of my testimony. You can read it later if you're bored and need to go to sleep. So I want to cover a few topics that have been given a little bit of attention, but not as much as they should. APFO should include a test for emergency services. Our county seems to be more interested these days in developing primarily age-restricted communities and encouraging residents to age in place. This path we are heading down will only put additional strains on our first responders and other emergency services. APFO should include a stormwater test to determine what negative impacts the downstream flooding, what negative potential downstream flooding would exist. Much of Howard County was developed prior to the adoption of stormwater management regulations, and as such, communities experience flooding, and not just during 500-year storm events. Any new development within or upstream of existing communities that do not contain adequate stormwater management should be required to manage the 100-year storm event or greater. The state required minimum is not enough. As an example, state required child safety laws for motor vehicles. Technically, you can bring a newborn infant home from a hospital in a booster seat in the front seat. And that's our minimum standard. The only laws regarding child safety seats are they have to be in something if they are under the age of 8 or shorter than 4'9". And also, in a rear-facing child seat, they can't be in the front seat. So technically, you can bring a newborn home in a booster seat in the front of your car. So minimum doesn't work. There's loopholes to minimums. So I also request that APFO should include a storm drain test to determine if existing culverts or storm drains downstream of a development can handle any additional flow or if properties will become flooded. Many of the storm drain systems and culverts are decades old, and due to additional development, many of them are no longer adequate. This inadequacy has resulted in flooding and property losses throughout the county and also had flood insurance implications for residents through FEMA. One example is Wright and Valley Mead, some of my very own neighbors. The culvert under Route 40 was built in the 1950s, at a time when much of the watershed upstream had yet to be developed. At the time, the culvert was sufficient to handle the flow. However, now that the watershed is almost completely developed, even a two-year storm event begins to back up in the culvert. One of the adjacent residents has stated that they had only had a few inches of rain in their basement during Hurricane Agnes. Hurricane Agnes is the benchmark here in Maryland by which we compare all other storms. Different timing, that was drawn out over a few days versus Lee and Irene and the storm back in July of 2016. But in the past 6 years, they've had 2 storm events nearly fill their basement. Things are changing. Our climate is changing. Whether you like to admit it or not, whether you believe the cause is man-made or not, it is changing. And as a result, what used to be a 10-year storm is now a 2-year storm. There's a big push in our community to get regulators to look at these storms and to adjust them to be more appropriate for what is our current situation. So we have a lot of things going on here in this county right now, but right now our topic at hand is APFO tonight. And I have to ask, why can we not change the model that we are currently operating under? Why does our prosperity have to revolve around how many development units are allowed to be built each year? Why shouldn't the emphasis be based upon how socially and environmentally responsible we are as a community, or how successful we are at educating our children? If we are the 4th richest county in the nation, then why don't we have the 4th best school district? Why don't we have the 4th best stormwater management system? Who wants to be the jurisdictions with the most strip malls per capita, or the most frequently flooded county in the state? It's time for all of us, not just some of us, to start being a part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I just want to thank you all for your time. You've invested probably way too much time in this than most normal bills that come before you, but thank you all for being patient with us.
Thank you, sir. And you mentioned you had emailed us your testimony. Go into much depth in terms of the stormwater and storm drain tests, in terms of some of the specifics you'd suggest, or because obviously in sort of the development process, the Planning and Zoning Department evaluates the development itself for stormwater, and we've recently raised increased the regs for the 100-year storm and set a process in place to update it regularly, as opposed to, I guess it was almost 20 years, I think, between updates. But
because you guys use Atlas now versus
right, exactly. Yeah. So the question is, does your testimony that you emailed us have a little bit more detail on specifically how you would address?
No, it doesn't. I'd be happy to go into a little bit more with you another time.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
I was going to say, just similar to the question I asked Mr. Walsh, was if you could provide that, was glancing at your testimony.
Great.
So, yeah.
Sure.
That would be very helpful.
Got some ideas for that too on stormwater management.
That would be very helpful, and I think Dr. Zhang, who was here last week, there he is, there this week, relative to transportation. So it'd be helpful. We are blessed with a lot of experts in Howard County, and so interested in hearing a little bit more about those ideas. Great,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for preserving the rain tax.
Thank you.
Not that it's a rain tax.
Very good. We're not going to have that debate tonight. Yes.
You sure? You sure you don't want to?
Yeah,
have
I'm pretty sure about that. There you go, all in favor. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, council. My name is Holly DeFrancis, and I reside at 9809 Millwick Drive in Ellicott City, Maryland, 21042. I want to take the time to say we really appreciate your investment in hearing from the public on this. It's been something that we've been calling for a long time, and we are very gratified that you are willing to hear our voices. I don't want to take up too much time because I believe that most of my points have been addressed previously in reference to the schools, but I wanted to take a moment to point out some things that I think are getting a little less emphasis, but are also important to consider. I'm a lifelong resident of Howard County. I received my education here in our excellent public schools, and I have to say that even when I was a small child, which was more than a couple of years ago, there were a plethora of trailers, even at my elementary school. That was supposed to be a very temporary solution while we implemented some critical build-outs of schools and renovations and built some additional schools on land that was available. Those portables have not gone away in any way, shape, or form. They have been added to schools, elementary, middle, and high school throughout the county as a matter of course, not a matter of emergency management. I have a master's degree in accounting. I'm a CPA, and I work in financial analysis and economics. So I have a fair amount of background in the budgetary constraints and concerns that you all are taxed with, and I know it's no small feat to try and allocate money. However, I would encourage you to not continue to allow developers to have a blank check. That has been going on for too many decades. As a lifelong resident, I have seen it evolve. And it's only gotten worse, not better. The phrase is, we only address things when they're an emergency, except when they're a catastrophe. Now they're a catastrophe. This is at your doorstep, and I urge you to take immediate action on it. I think it's very notable that the entire community has come together with the same points that they are stressing to you over and over again. It's very rare that you get that many people from that many backgrounds to agree on something. So I would urge you to really take our points in strong consideration. So to just touch on a couple of things that I think have not been addressed as much this evening, we all care about our schools very much. They are the crown jewel of Howard County. It's why people like me want to come back. It's why new people want to join us. And if we continue to allow them to be overcrowded, we will lose that crown jewel. No one will want to come here and develop. We will lose tax revenue because of it. But also, and very importantly, we need to make sure that we're including tests for stormwater management. I want to echo the points of Mike Thompson, but it's also important to include a test for emergency management services. And emergency management services, I would suggest instituting an incremental fee based on a per dwelling unit and not based on square footage or any other sort of a metric.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Karina Skaraya, and I live at 3991 View Top Road, Ellicott City. I am a National Board Certified Teacher, a Grosvenor Teacher Fellow, and a National Geographic Certified Teacher. And it's interesting how nobody asks the teachers, how do you teach an overcrowded classroom? I was not thinking about speaking tonight, but somebody quoted from a report that good schools are good, no matter what. I would like to ask those people to come and visit my school. Try classroom management for 45 minutes. I'll tell you, you won't even last for 15 minutes. No. Forget about teaching them the Common Core standards. You know, Maryland has the best reputation in the nation. Yay, Howard County is first in Maryland. Yay. 5 years down the road, those overcapacitated classrooms are not going to be boasting about excellent PARCC scores. They will not be doing that, trust me. I'm a teacher. The funny thing is, nobody asks the teachers, and I don't see so many teachers. You know why? Because they are scared. They're scared to speak their minds. I'm here because guess what? I live in Howard County. I chose the best school systems. I work in Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm a lifelong educator, and I know what it is like to be in an overcrowded classroom. I know what it's like not to be able to differentiate instructions. Although you put it down in your paper that we do differentiate instructions, although you mandate it in policies, if teachers can't do it, it's not going to happen. And when children's education is impacted, you will not have those people move in here, not in Howard County. So I have lived in Montgomery County. I teach in Prince George's County. I live currently in Howard County. We have an excellent education. We have an excellent reputation for looking at children first. Don't sully that reputation as you pack our students into a sardine-sized classroom. It's not worth it. Your reputation is not worth it. So look at the infrastructure before you make those decisions. Ask some teachers, visit some schools. Go ahead, visit some schools. See what it's like to sit surrounded by special needs children. It doesn't work.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Have a good evening.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Jeremy Rutter, 1720 St. Michael's Road in Woodbine, Maryland. I actually love the county. So I moved back here, moved to Howard County in 1989. I went to Glenelg. My grades went up immediately when I got to that high school. I graduated, got a decent job, was out in Wisconsin for about 7 years, got married, had our first child, and decided we had to absolutely get back here. That was our decision. And it was because of the schools and my move here in 1989 that got my wife and I to come back. I live and work here. Trying to get from Wisconsin back to here was difficult. Things cost different from Wisconsin to here. So we moved west. We kept going west until we pulled sheets out and found a house that was almost to Mount Airy. But we are in the county. So my kids attend Lisbon, and it's fantastic. There's, as you know, like many of the other schools in the West, there's plenty of capacity. So they're getting a great education, and it's wonderful. In saying that, and the point is, not all the schools are overcrowded, and redistricting is the bad word. No one wants to redistrict, and I understand why, and you got neighbors going to different schools. But with that understanding that redistricting is bad, moving this line from 115 to 100 will give us a chart that's entirely lit up as red. Nearly all the schools will be emergency overcrowded, artificially with just this change in percentage. And when I look at a chart like that, which we've done, that puts us into an emergency situation where redistricting will almost certainly happen. So I think there's a little bit of a situation of we can't really, we have to be careful what we wish for here by moving this line around, because it's going to be an immediate solution to an entire chart full of closed schools. You'll have no choice. I'm here to support CB62 and 61 as they are, and primarily because a group made up of citizens. There are 4 developers on this thing. The rest were citizens and other people that were appointed. This group took most of a year educating themselves, getting smarter and smarter, going through all these things, which we really don't have time in 2 hearings to go through, and they came out with recommendations. So I absolutely support the 2 bills based on that committee, and I'm confident they came up with good recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, hold on. So just, you've heard a lot of other things outside of just directly AFFO having to do with the, with fees and the charges. And, personally, I think some of them require some looking at, based off of, where, your, role out there in that part of the community. I mean, what are your thoughts as far as on the fees? I mean, and us increasing the fees?
I think the stuff the home builders came with this evening is accurate. The fees in Montgomery County are the higher ones. But you've got to add in everything. You've got to put the school, the excise tax, all these things added all up, put us as the second highest for fees. So we can talk about it afterwards and go through the charts. I know there were some questions on the MIHUs. If you don't build a unit, you've got to pay that fee. But in building that unit, that is a fee.
What
That's an
about-
extra expense.
What about for properties that end up getting units that didn't exist? So starting with some point in time, and now there are units that weren't necessarily as part of a rezoning or something like that, and them potentially having to pay more also.
I'm not even sure what you're.
So you go from R20 to RSA8 on a rezoning. Now you've generated however many units, or off of the CEF, under the whole CEF concept, and that's now residential units that didn't exist before and now exist. Basically, just end up creating value that wasn't there. What about those potentially pay for those additional units? If it was 20 units and now there's 100 units, the 80 additional units having to pay that much more.
I'm sure all that could be looked at.
Okay.
But
All right.
the current bills don't talk about
I know.
anything
I
to do with that.
I understand that. I was just asking just because the concept having to do with some of the fees. I'm just thinking about ideas, and while some people are here and testifying, I figure might as well ask the questions.
Yeah, I think lots of scenarios were brought up in that year-long look that committee took a look at, and things were thrown out, things were added, things were brought back in, and all I know is a lot of effort was put through that by a lot of people who were smart, and they made, they were educated. They came in and figured out how all this stuff works. So I support what that went through.
Right.
It's certainly a lot more than I can tell you in 3 minutes.
All right, thank you.
So to clarify, do you support the fee going up? 'Cause that was part of what the committee did.
I support 62 and 61 as they're written, yes.
But do you support the fee going up? Because that was part of what the task force came up with.
Yes, when it's coupled with the state enabling legislation.
So you support that? Okay.
Great. Any other questions, colleagues? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Royer.
You bet.
Sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Soto. I live at 9664 Susie's Way, Ellicott City, Maryland, 21042. I come before you tonight in opposition of CB Bills 61 and 62. A couple of things to clarify about tonight. I've been at several meetings today. I'm a real estate agent by nature. Just to let you know, I sold 2 homes today, and we have more kids coming. Okay? But that isn't really the first thing I want to say. I was back to school night at my local elementary school tonight. There are 703 students in a building with a capacity of 612, St. John's Lane. The PTA president and several parents found out I was coming to the meeting this evening and asked me to please implore that you look at the apartments that feed into our schools. A lot of discussion was mentioned last week regarding the transfer taxes and the idea that you could raise the transfer taxes on resales to possibly help cover the cost of some of the development of new buildings. So I brought for your information today a little bit of market statistics from our local multiple listing service. This is all as of August 30th this year. To date, resales have given the Howard County $14.5 million in transfer tax revenue. If you look at the papers behind here, you have 19.9 million last year. In 2015, 17.8 million. 2014, 14.9 million, and I could go on. But if you look at this in reality, we had a slower housing market in the early, 2012, 2013, 2014. And even at that point, we were still giving the county $14 million annually towards transfer taxes. So before we even consider the idea of raising transfer taxes, we have to make sure that our currently, our transfer taxes are the same as Montgomery County, okay? Prior to proposing or even discussing an increase in transfer taxes, the development charges should equal those of Montgomery County. Okay, because why would this county charge more in transfers for resale than it does for new construction? We have to ask ourselves that question. So bottom line is, my grandson asked me yet again, why are you going out, Graham? Because I've been coming out in front of this council now for several months, discussing neighborhoods that are to be built in my local area, and the fact that we do not have capacity at our schools or on our roads. So I implore you to please look at this information I provided you with this evening, and think about it long and hard before you just immediately think that we can increase transfer taxes on resales, because that will not solve our situation. We need to look at the big picture here. There's many reasons why we're in the situation we are. Smart growth legislation led to where the schools were developed, and housing's not there to accommodate them.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions?
Yeah, hold on.
Wait, Ms. Soto.
Sorry to have to ask you this one. So as a real estate agent and as you're selling homes, what guidance are you giving people as it relates to schools when they ask you about schools, as far as likelihood of redistricting or people thinking that once they're somewhere, they're going to always be there?
Well, not everyone uses me as their real estate agent, first of all.
I understand that.
So let's be clear on that. I tell people to choose wisely and to make sure they're happy with the schools that are all around them, because they're not sure whether they're going to go to the one to the east or to the west or the south or the north, because I can't control that.
Right.
And that is my guidance, and I never tell them to choose one neighborhood over the other.
Right.
But I can be honest with you. When people are moving to Howard County, they already know what school they want. These are very educated folks. They've done lots of research. They know more than I do frequently. Okay, so they're telling me what they want.
Yeah, as far as the actual school, but as far as them, maintaining in that school or whatever.
They need to understand that they have to look around them on all four sides, because that may be the school that they're redistricted to at some point. I don't guarantee any of that. In fact, our multiple listing service indicates on the bottom that this is not 100% factual, that they're supposed to do their own research. Okay, so that's why I look at that.
Great.
Okay?
I know you do, but I had to ask the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Soto.
Hello. Sorry, probably first time in front of a microphone. I will say I was not prepared to testify today. I didn't know you were going to be open up that option. I do appreciate it, but I'm really under-prepared for it.
We
But
need your
do-
name and
Yep.
address, please.
But do want to speak tonight. So for the record, my name is Karina Fisher. I reside at 4053 High Point Road in Ellicott City, Maryland. One thing I do want to touch on, just to reintroduce us, last week we were called unhappy people that like to complain. I want to clarify that. We are educated voters, citizens of Howard County. So we are not unhappy, complaining people. We are educated, voting citizens. The things that I support in the bill are 100% capacity for the schools, high school be included in the testing, mitigation, which means planning, financial, at 95%, and APFO to be reviewed every 4 years. One thing that bothers me about the conversations I hear is the underutilization. And when I look at that, we don't have the problem of underutilized schools. We have the problem of overcrowding. So when I talked to Mr. Kittleman in a group on August 31st, that was one of the problems he mentioned, that it could result in underutilization. So my question was, we don't have that problem currently, correct? And his answer was, no, we don't. So then if APFO can be changed at any time, which he said it could be, why are we not looking at changing APFO now to address the problem that we do have, which is overcrowding? And then if it adjusts and we are lucky to have a problem of undercapacity, then change it. But that's not our problem today, so that's not an excuse. The second thing is with that, there was testimony on September 11th that as a county I think it was either 95 to 100% or 99 to 100% utilized throughout the county, all schools. That'd be nice if you could take kids and lump them together as Play-Doh and then redistribute them in equal proportions. But they are not Play-Doh. They are not widgets that can be equally distributed. They are individual beings with individual parents that live in communities and households that cannot be broken and spread apart in equal parts. So we have to address where we can, and that is building in the east and where is that we are overcrowded. So if we don't have school capacity, then we need to build where we're developing. I've learned a lot from citizens, and one thing that I did learn from actually a person that was on the APFO task force is that shifting development from the west to the east was a large contributor of why the overcrowding happened and why the redistricting is now trying to make up for that. So I ask for smart planning when it comes for development. That's one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Ms. Fisher, just to clarify, we do have schools, just as you heard somebody talk about, we do have schools that are very underutilized as well as very overcrowded. It is
You have individual schools that are underutilized, but we are not individual underutilization as a county.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because that's not what I heard you say, and I think right now, couldn't bring the numbers up quick enough to see, where they are. There are some regions too that are very underutilized and very over capacity.
But as a county, we are not. And that's not the problem we're dealing with. If I was not clear, let me be very clear now.
I just want to make sure and just understand both for the existing school board as well as us. Some of the things such as the placement of Marriott Ridge High School wasn't a decision we made. That was decisions that was made long before we were here.
I understand that, but your decision is now to fix it, and that is to amend APFO.
So that's not the only thing. Amending APFO alone isn't going to fix
It's a
that
piece
problem.
of the puzzle
It
that's
is.
broken.
I agree.
Fix it.
No, I agree. I agree that we do need to work on it and fix it, but I just want to make clear
I am
that
clear.
that's not the only, no, I just want to make clear that's not the only thing. So even if we do that, it's not going to be that magic bullet. There's still some other things that we're going to need to do. That's all.
There are many things, especially communication between the entities that make this decision, whether it's the county executive, the county council, the superintendent, the Board of Education. There are many problems. This is one of them.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
I just want to make clear that that wasn't the only issue and wanted to make sure.
Totally understand that.
Thank you. I think we are in violent agreement at this point. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sir? If there is anybody else who'd like to testify, otherwise this gentleman will have the last word. Okay, come on down.
Good evening. Stephen Ferranti, 5771 Waterloo Road, Ellicott City, Maryland. I own a real estate brokerage company that sells residential real estate, and I'm also the biggest land broker in Howard County, Maryland Land Advisors. I don't want to talk about that per se. I want to talk from a perspective of, I'm also an instructor at Johns Hopkins University in the School of Real Estate, and I teach a class on business analysis and financial analysis, but also market analysis. And one of the things that we try to explain in that program is how cities and communities are built, and part of that is obviously education. Howard County has done a marvelous job over the last 50 years, which explains how we've gone from a population of 30+ thousand to 300+ thousand in that time. One of the things that we look at, though, when we look at an analysis of schools, is you don't build a school because you have overcrowding. A school is an 80-year solution to a 10-year problem. And so when you look at it from a school standpoint, why are you building the school? If you're building a school because you expect more housing to be built there that will keep that school fed, then it makes sense to build the school. But if you have population where there's existing schools that are underutilized and you have school that is overcrowded, redistricting, which is a bad word, rebalancing is perhaps a better word, it should be utilized. And that's really where the problem comes in, is you can't have a situation where you have on the east, you have overcrowding, and on the western or the central area, you don't have overcrowding. You have to balance what you have. Again, it doesn't make sense to spend $20, $30, $50 million to build a school to solve a short-term problem. It's the harder solution not to build the school because parents want new schools, but that really is the better solution. The second thing, if I can, is as a land broker, and everyone talks about Montgomery County, you can't build an inexpensive house in Montgomery County, and yet people are always talking about how come housing prices are so expensive. I personally have had deals where I've not been able to sell the family farm so that the person could retire in Montgomery County, in parts of Harford County, and parts of Prince George's County because of the impact fees and the other fees. When the way that a builder looks at an impact fee is if they can't add it to the house price, it comes out of the land price. It's really that simple. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the information. Colleagues, any questions? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Lee Rainey, 5657 Phelps Luck Drive, Columbia, Maryland. I'm here as three people. One is a child that grew up here, and I moved away, and now I'm an adult moving here for the schools for my child. She's not yet in Howard County schools, so this is all completely new to me. She's still in the school where her dad lives in Baltimore County. She'll be here next year, and all of this is a complete shock to me. I stand behind everything everyone has said. My other person here, this is why I didn't speak, because I know I'll cry. I am a business owner in historic Ellicott City, and I just need... We have no power as parents and as business owners in your county. You guys have the power to make this better for all of us. We need you. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Sure.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dr. Satish Potluri. We moved from Midwest Ohio, and we chose the Howard County because of the kids' future. And it's a shock what we come into, what we've been going through the last couple of months. 2 months ago, I'm not sure what Apfo was, what redistricting was. For the last 2 months, I've been on the computer looking at all the stuff. My son comes to me and asks me, are you moving me again? I said, I hope not. You know, we are here talking about Apfo, and the main problem was redistricting that causing these issues. You know, my son says, I cannot make any new friends because you keep changing my school every year. So I don't have an answer for that. And you might say, this message here because of not you, it has been in the past, and you're looking at the kids suffering right now. No portable, living in portables, schools are overcrowded. You have a chance to correct this so that the future has good education, which is what most of the people come to this county for. And again, my brother lives in Montgomery County, but I choose the Howard County because it's the Howard County. So stronger Apfo, stronger Howard County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate your patience in attending round 3 and listening to your fellow citizens and their testimony. So at this point, this concludes the public hearing. Thank you all, and have a good night. Council members, just if there are any items that you want to add to the work session agenda, Mrs. Feldmark would like it by noon tomorrow.